who will win the AFC North? That is an excellent question. Last year, this division featured 2 playoff teams, and 3 of the 4 had winning records. Furthermore, this division, everyone finished 500 against each other. There were no sweeps. Everyone was pretty much on even footing when it came to playing against each other. This division could quite possibly be the most volatile of any of the divisions in this league. Mainly because these teams, they got a lot of great matchups against each other. So, what's the key to success for each of these teams? How can my team, your team, win this division? That is what we're going to talk about on this episode of State of the North. Now, obviously, I am a very small channel, so if you guys could tackle that subscribe button, like the video, share with your friends, this would be greatly appreciated. I'm building this thing from the ground up, so I kind of got no outside help, so word of mouth is the only way this thing is going to grow and become something special. So if you could do that, I'd really appreciate it. But without further ado, let's talk about the Cleveland Browns. Guys, I said Browns. Come on, I'm not gonna kick this franchise while it's oh, yeah. I guess they already had that happen to him. Cleveland. So, Cleveland finished with a 7-10 record last year. Not great. Only won last year with a losing record. So, if you're a Cleveland Brown fan, what does your team need to do in order to win this division, get to the playoffs? Well, first and foremost, your defense needs to improve drastically. Now, you probably heard a lot of talking heads who say, oh yeah, the defense needs to improve. This is why. There were 5 games where your opponent scored at least 30 points or more. The simple matter is, you guys aren't, no team is going to win when you are giving up points that quickly unless you have a superstar offense. And even then, that's not a guarantee. So, I also just want to throw in an honorable mention. You gave up 28 against the Pittsburgh Steelers final game of the season. You really couldn't even try to have a little bit of pride at the end of the season, Cleveland? Stick it to Mike Tomlin. Try to not give him a winning record? No? Alright, cool. So again, there are these 5 games. It's a pretty big flashing red light for what not to do if you want to win this division. Now, 3 of these losses are kind of excusable. You played against Josh Allen, who was the preseason MVP favorite. Tua was playing at an MVP level this season until he got his brain mashed and turned into potato soup. And Justin Herbert, there are a lot of people saying that, he's a very talented quarterback. He's got a lot of those physical attributes, and the Chargers have a lot of great skill position pieces. So those 3 games are semi-excusable, I guess. But the 2 that are the worse than the Steelers game, were to the Jets and the Patriots. First off, the moment I saw Joe Flacco was the quarterback of the Jets at the time they played the Browns, I had a funny feeling I was going to be an L, just because Joe Flacco, was former quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens. But that is inexcusable. Joe Flacco, last season had one of the worst quarterback performances in the league. And you also you gave up over 30 to Matt freaking Patricia. Matt Patricia, guys, was a defensive coordinator who decided to cosplay last year as the offensive coordinator for the New England Patriots. And you gave up over 30. What are you doing? Just look at that guy chewing his pencil like a dog bone. That's just humiliating. I believe it was 38 points. That's ridiculous. Here's another key to success. Don't use a backup quarterback for 11 games. There were a lot of people last year who thought, hey, maybe you can go 500 with this backup quarterback, and then Deshaun Watson will be able to carry you. No, that doesn't work like that. So these are all the games that Jacoby Brissett started for the Browns last year. and he finished 4-7. And the only 4 games he won were not incredibly impressive. I mean, Carolina, they finished with a losing record, guys. They finished really bad. And their coach got fired. Baker Mayfield got expelled. Pittsburgh. Mitch Trubisky was the quarterback. Cincinnati, you just had a great matchup, and you defeated a washed Tom Brady in overtime. Congratulations. That's not great, gang. And furthermore, you lost to some teams you shouldn't. I mean, Atlanta, the Falcons. And yeah, 38 points to the Patriots. That's ridiculous. But you relying on backup quarterbacks in this league for almost 2/3 of your entire season is obviously not going to go well. So don't do that. So Deshaun Watson, you should probably not, do that. The Browns made some tiny moves. But the big thing that they did to try to address your concerns and make sure that you get a better experience is, this guy who was pretty successful defensive coordinator. Fire him, bring in Jim Schwartz. Who's Jim Schwartz? My man, he was a previous coach for the Detroit Lions. He got fired, for his service to the great state of Michigan. So hey, why not bring a guy who didn't work out in Detroit? I'm sure this'll work well for you, Cleveland. They also tried to add a really interesting piece. They added Za'Darius Smith from the Vikings, which I was really surprised. This seems like a pretty good move. For those of you who may not have been aware, the Za'Darius Smith was a great pass rusher for the Green Bay Packers before going over to the Vikings. So he had 10 sacks during his season in Minnesota. I mean, he doesn't need to be a superstar. But with him and Myles Garrett on opposite sides of the ball, you're gonna make opposing quarterbacks have absolute fits. They also, I talk about what the first round pick that the Cleveland Browns used to draft somebody, but the Houston still has that, so they got pick number 12 that they're able to use to trade up to get Will Anderson. Good job, Cleveland. You also use your second round pick to get this guy, Elijah Moore, wide receiver from the New York Jets. That is a move. Get your quarterback more weapons to play with. It'll be up to the old masseuse man over here, the massage marauder, in order to carry this team. Where he goes, this team will follow. And against Washington, he didn't look terrible. Passing wise, 3 for 3, 12 yards. He also rushed for 20 yards on 3 carries. But also, Washington also stopped them on 4th and goal. So, congrats, Deshaun. You can't even score a touchdown in the preseason. It was that was a little bit hard to watch. But again, if Deshaun Watson can rebound and Za'Darius Smith and Myles Garrett are able to help improve that defense and this new defensive coordinator works out, then Cleveland could absolutely be a contender. So let's get on to the next team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Oh, I just love this image. Yep. Oh, that was probably their last chance to actually do something in the postseason. It was against the Cleveland Browns. Oh my God. They didn't even have their head coach that game. So, but yeah, Cleveland, you got rid of Baker Mayfield, who did that. Yay. Oh, so Pittsburgh. When I tried to make these videos, one of the things I did was I went back to some of the box scores from last year and tried to do a little bit of analysis. I know, saying that, oh yeah, you gave up over 30 points in 5 different games last year doesn't seem like that hard-hitting analysis. But this thing that I stumbled upon is something. I think I discovered the Pittsburgh Steelers method last year. Their game plan to get a winning record. So look at these rushing totals: 198, 154, 144. Win. 102, 95, 54 yards rushing. Loss, loss, loss. Think it's just there? 65, 104, 91. Loss, loss, loss. Simple truth of the matter is that if the Pittsburgh Steelers didn't rush more than 120 yards, they did not win the game. Were there some exceptions? Yeah, 106 and 75 rush yards. Those were both losses. And there's a game where they rushed over 120 yards, and they lost that game. But guess what? In the games where they won and they couldn't rush well, they had to rely on their defense to play out of their mind. 3 interceptions, 3 sacks against Derek Carr. And that week 1, they had to go into overtime, but 4 interceptions and 7 sacks on Joe Burrow. And on top of it, you had to rely on missing field goals. On Evan McPherson missing field goals. And Jalen Hurts played a perfect game. So this is the Pittsburgh strategy that they used last year. They asked their young quarterback, to be a little bit of a game manager. They have pretty vanilla offensive schemes. They rush for at least 120 yards. They have their defense play out of their mind. And when in doubt, they just sprinkle some of that Steeler magic pixie dust to stumble into a winning record. That's the only way I can explain it. So I don't think that you can keep doing this strategy and win the division, let alone get to the playoffs, win playoff games, or even a Super Bowl. Which is where the Pittsburgh Steelers standard was until recently. Everyone's like, oh yeah, Mike Tomlin's never had a losing record. That's the standard at Pittsburgh. So what they need to do is have a little bit of a overhaul on their game plan. So first off, they need to really focus on developing their young quarterback. AKA, you gotta actually let him develop. Fooling around with Mitch Trubisky last year was the dumbest thing that they could have possibly done. I quite frankly, I didn't understand it at all. Everyone knew what Mitch Trubisky was. He was not anything special. And to be honest with you, he lost you these games. If you had Kenny Pickett, maybe you win a couple of these and you let him develop or get some of those kinks out early. I mean, like New England, 17-14. New York Jets, that game only turned around when they brought in Kenny Pickett. And I still can't explain the Cincinnati one. Mitch Trubisky did not look especially impressive during that one. It was just Joe Burrow self-destructing that won them that game. They also need to improve that offensive line. It wasn't great. Najee Harris kind of looked like he was being used like a battering ram sometimes, and Kenny Pickett was under duress. So I also want to make sure we emphasize, like, Mike Tomlin's a great defensive coach, but you got to have a smart offensive coordinator who's very creative, and that was not what the Pittsburgh Steelers passing game looked like last year. So you got to have Pickett. Like, Pickett wanted to throw the ball down the field when he was in. So you got to lean into that. You got to have some creative concepts, And so I would recommend probably getting an offensive coordinator who has had a track record with developing quarterbacks. Kind of like remember what that guy Shane Steichen with the Chargers and the Eagles saw Herbert and Hurts pop. I would try to look for somebody like that to help him develop. But you kept Matt Canada. Well, that's not great. But despite all that, Kenny Pickett looked awesome in the preseason, in his first drive of the preseason. 6 or 7, 70 yards, threw a touchdown. They may have something special here in Kenny Pickett. So this will all come down to a very similar thing. Kenny Pickett, if he develops and the Steelers keep balling out on defense, they're going to be unstoppable. If the offensive line is atrocious, or if Kenny Pickett stagnates, or the defense gets worse, then the Steelers may find themselves in a very similar position to where they were last year. But if you're a Steelers fan, you better hope that doesn't happen. Now we're getting towards the top of the division, talking about the Baltimore Ravens. So, Baltimore, you got one very simple key to victory, and that is Lamar Jackson. The man has to stay healthy. So, last year, when Lamar was healthy, he was playing, he was in MVP form. I mean, they were 7-4, they were top of the division. They had that weird loss to Jacksonville, but and the Giants too. That's still funny when looking back. But like the losses, like the Buffalo Bills and the Miami were, they were respectable losses. I mean, that Miami loss was not on Lamar Jackson. That was not on Lamar Jackson. That was on the Ravens. So you hang 38 points on a team, you should win the game. But the moment Lamar Jackson got injured, look at that. 3-3, 500 team. And once Lamar got injured, he did not return the rest of the season. And in 2021, it was a very similar story. Ravens were rolling with Lamar. They're 8-4, and then they lost their next 5 games to finish with a losing record and watched the Bengals win the division and go on their Super Bowl run. So you want to know how bad the Ravens' injury luck? It's not just Lamar. Like, their mascot got injured last year. Which, that's pretty funny. And the previous year, they set records for the amount of players they got injured. That's going to be a huge part of the equation. Because the Ravens have an amazing roster. Last year in that playoff game against Cincinnati Bengals, I mean, they played really well until, this happened. And it was a 98-yard return for a touchdown, which, there may have been a block in the back on that play, but... Well, don't use Tyler Huntley. Don't have Tyler Huntley as your quarterback, and that won't be an issue. Because the Ravens score there, they maybe win that game. So, to say that the Ravens offseason last year was a little bit rough on this front would be a little bit of an understatement. Instead of just trying to appease Lamar, they decided to have a little bit of a public feud. So first, they placed a non-exclusive franchise tag on Lamar Jackson. Then Lamar Jackson started talking about how he was ready to move on for the Ravens. And he requested a trade, which he did this stuff when his coach was talking to the press. And he had to answer these questions. And he'd just go on and say, we love Lamar, we love Lamar, we love Lamar. We want Lamar to be part of the team. And there were a lot of stupid narratives being pushed about the Baltimore Ravens. And you probably heard this from a lot of the pundits. Oh, why did he get an agent, man? If he could get an agent, everything would work out. Just get an agent, And that was a whole load of poo-poo. So, and you know how I know that's the case? It was because this guy, Roquan Smith. Roquan Smith was a linebacker from the Chicago Bears that the Baltimore Ravens traded for mid-season. And adding him made their defense absolutely elite. It improved drastically. And Roquan Smith represented himself. He got a 5-year extension from Baltimore. $100 million. So yeah, well, representing yourself was not the issue here. There were a lot of other factors at play. And there was a back and forth. You had many people like, you either love Lamar or you hate, or you think Lamar's an idiot who doesn't know how to make money. In the end, you gave Lamar what he wanted. You gave him 5 years, $260 million deal. He got $185 million of it guaranteed. Congratulations to Lamar Jackson. He got paid. And while they were giving him the contract, they also did a lot of other things to try to keep Lamar happy, which is generally a good thing to do, keep your quarterback happy. So they took the offensive coordinator Greg Roman, who, I know I was talking about how the Steelers need to run the ball to win. I mean, the Ravens' offense was interesting. Like that whole playoff game, they literally just their plan was just basically to run the ball and keep it out of Joe Burrow's hands as much as possible. But they fired him. They brought in this new guy, Todd Monken. They're going to try to make the offense more what Lamar Jackson, in theory, wants, which is to be more pass-heavy and less leg dependent so he does not get injured. So they also drafted Zay Flowers, speedy kid from, Boston College. Odell Beckham Jr., they also signed him. those two additions were great because until now, Lamar Jackson only had Mark Andrews, a reliable tight end, skill position wise, which is not great. So Lamar Jackson, in theory, could become an MVP once again. He could ball out and really take the Ravens organization back to the promised land. It'll be on his shoulders as long as if he can adjust this new offensive scheme, and if he can develop as a pocket passer, the Ravens have all the pieces to get to a Super Bowl. And this brings us to the preseason. I really wanted to watch a preseason drive for the Baltimore Ravens. I was hoping that I'd be able to kind of understand a little bit of their offense right now, but they're not playing their starters, so the preseason game really doesn't help a whole lot with this analysis. But oh well. Anyways, now we bring it to the previous division winner, the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, the Bengals have had a little bit of a curse history. They were 0-2 in their Super Bowl appearances, and when they weren't losing Super Bowls, they were wallowing in mediocrity under the thumb of the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. So, it was pretty miserable in Cincinnati until Joe Burrow came along. And instead of drafting Penei Sewell, they got his buddy Jamar Chase. They, combined with rising star in T. Higgins and fearless field goal kicker Evan McPherson, they had a crew that, despite setting league records for sacks, got to the Super Bowl but lost. And this previous year, they got to the AFC Championship game and lost. So the Bengals have one key to victory. It's the same one that they had the last 2 years and they haven't quite fixed. And that is to protect Joe Burrow. You got to protect your franchise QB. His rookie year ended, if you may not remember, because he tore his ACL, which, in hindsight, wasn't the worst thing from the standpoint of, hey, are you able to draft Jamar Chase and get him that awesome wide receiver? But also, guys, Joe Burrow did not get a normal offseason. He had to wear a brace. And, yeah, he won the AFC that year. It got sacked 19 times. 19 times in the playoffs. I believe 7 of those are in the Super Bowl, which you're not the fact that the Bengals even came as close to winning as they did under those circumstances is quite frankly an absolute miracle. But last year they had a very awful string of bad luck. So, week 16 against the New England Patriots, one of their offensive linemen, Lyle Collins, tore his ACL. Against the Baltimore Ravens, week 18, Alex Kappa left with an ankle injury. And in the playoff game, Jonah Williams left with a knee injury. And this final injury was the one that broke the camel's back. If you're watching that Cincinnati the Cincinnati and Baltimore game, it was very clear that once he went down, the offense kind of stuttered. Joe Burrow started to become a ping-pong ball again in the backfield. And even though they won that game and they were able to beat the Buffalo Bills, Joe Burrow got sacked 6 times against the Chiefs. Which, again, you're not going to win if your quarterback is sacked like that. So, they needed to add another piece, a little bit more depth, and hope that next season you don't have as many injury issues. So they got Orlando Brown Jr., which I have to say, solid move. I mean, he's definitely going to help protect Joe Burrow and add some more depth at lineman. But hey, Bengals, congratulations. I mean this sincerely. You have actually stumbled upon your own Tom Brady. You found a guy who is clutch on the road or at home. Doesn't matter. He is a absolute tough SOB in the playoffs. It doesn't matter how many times he gets hit. He's right back up. And you're probably wondering why I got up on the screen this little 2.5 seconds thing. That's the amount of time that Joe Burrow takes to throw the ball on average. And there's only one person who has a faster release in the league. Tom Brady, 2.3 seconds. So even if this offensive line is not an absolute star-studded unit, in theory, you don't need to protect Joe Burrow for that long because he's going to get the ball out quick. And I don't know how you did it, Bengals fans, but you got something special here. Now, you take care of Burrow, protect him, pay him, and you're going to be in contention. But if you can't protect him, you're going to need that defense to be good. That was a huge part of their postseason success last year. While Burrow was getting absolutely battered around, the defense played well enough that he could, that offense could scratch and claw and get out with wins, which worked, I guess, up until the Rams and the Chiefs. It's kind of heartbreaking, but that Los Angeles Rams loss in the Super Bowl, and that loss to Kansas City, those are the exact same score. 23-20. So, you got to replace some of these pieces that you lost on defense. You got to keep that unit together because either you need that offensive line to play well, B, you need that defense to keep balling out to allow Burrow the chance to fight through it, or C, you do both. You lost Von Bell and Jesse Bates. Those are your two safeties. Those are really, really good players. And thank God you got rid of Eli Apple. Well, I guess not, thank God, but Eli Apple is a veteran presence, but he is no longer with you either. You got a lot of holes to fill. Now, luckily, Chidobe Awuzie should be healthy this year and coming back. Dax Hill should develop because he looked pretty good as a rookie last year. And you also made some moves in the draft to try to add new pieces onto your team. But no matter what happens, this is all going to come down to Joe Burrow. And Bengals fans everywhere are probably, if you're a Bengals fan, you're probably a little bit nervous right now, to say the very least, because it's very unclear after Joe Burrow injured his calf strain during training camp when he's going to return. Some people say, it could be before the season. Some people like Jamar Chase are saying, hey, sit out extra weeks during the year. There's a lot of uncertainty here, and don't know what's going to happen. But I would not necessarily panic yet. But for the third year in a row, Joe Burrow has not had a normal offseason. First it was COVID, then it was his ACL, and last year it was his he had an appendectomy. He had to have a surgery. And yeah, the Bengals started slow, but with him at quarterback, they were able to get into a rhythm and roar into the postseason. I'm not saying that's going to happen this time, but we have seen this movie before. So, where does that leave these teams? For the Baltimore Ravens, got to keep Lamar happy. For all these guys, really, you gotta hope that your quarterback either develops or continues to be a phenomenal talent at the position. Kenny Pickett and Deshaun Watson, they both need to, for Deshaun Watson, return to Pro Bowl status. For Kenny Pickett, he needs to become not necessarily a Hall of Famer, but he needs to be more than a game manager. For Baltimore, Lamar Jackson needs to develop. And for all these guys, the defenses need to either A, improve, or B, return to the form that they had last season. Defenses have tended to fluctuate in the past in the NFL, and I would not be surprised if that happens again. But the crazy thing is that the Browns have never won this division, but also no team has won this division 2 times in a row. So who knows what's going to happen. But that's where I'm going to leave you off with today. So hopefully we'll get some more news out of training camp. With some of these preseason games, we'll get some more information and make some accurate predictions. But until that point, this is kind of all we got right now. So, Make sure you guys leave a like, tackle that subscribe button, make sure you share the video with your friends, and with that out of the way, I'll see you later.